My family informed me that we would not be taking a vacation this year. The finances are tight. Until my credit card was charged for a 12-person boat, I trusted them. I didn't challenge pricey spa add-ons or charter sunset dinners. I simply pushed the dispute button. At the dock, everyone froze the pooled travel wallet. "No payment, no boarding," they were informed. "What did you do when my sister texted you?" I just responded. "Fixed a billing mistake." My dad lost his mind. And when my mom sat us down at the beginning of June and told us that we wouldn't be taking a vacation this year, we were all poor. I didn't ask any questions. After accepting it with a nod, I secretly decided to put the $6,500 I had saved for a family vacation in my high-yield account for later. I didn't feel dissatisfied or irritated. All right, I just assumed. A challenging year. Inflation has been harsh. Dad's hours were reduced in the spring and gas prices are high. I offered to pay the summer utility bills because I knew how tight things were. I didn't expect anyone to thank me, but they didn't. It was always that way. Then my credit card company sent me 3 consecutive alerts last Thursday. I initially believed that the $3,800 payment to a San Diego luxury yacht rental service was an error. The second was a sunset dinner cruise, which cost an additional $950. Additionally, the third advertisement specifically offered a spa $1,200 for luxurious therapeutic treatments and a champagne brunch. All of the charges originated from the same joint travel account that we had created years prior, in which I was the only one who ever made a deposit. Dad only used the account for emergencies, correct. After perhaps 30 seconds of staring at my phone, I clicked dispute. I registered with my bank, blocked the account, and reported all of this to the fraud department. That evening, they were scheduled to board a yacht for 12 people. Full catered dinner, drinks, the works, a 4-day floating paradise. I didn't say a word. I just waited. I heard from them about an hour later. The marina staff had turned them away. My sister Megan texted me in all caps. "What have you done?" I replied. I corrected a mistake in the bill that set it off. I didn't even have time to set my phone down before it started blowing up voicemails from my mom, screaming about how I humiliated them in front of her church friends, family. My dad shouting into the receiver, calling me ungrateful, selfish, a traitor. My other sister Maddie just sent one line. "I hope you're proud." They were furious. I was calm. Next morning, Dad showed up at my apartment door. No call, no text, just banged on it until I opened. He stood there shaking red in the face. Didn't even wait to come inside before unloading. "You've ruined us." He said you embarrassed his family. "You have no idea of the damage you've done." I let him go on when he finally ran out of words. I told him the truth. That money, it was for me. I'd been saving it for 4 years. That joint account. I'd kept it active only for when we traveled together. Not for my parents to go yachting while pretending they couldn't afford a beach motel. And the worst part? I would have helped them, honestly, if they just asked. They lied instead, still spent everything behind my back while deceiving me into believing we were broke. They assumed that I would never find out. However, I did, and I was no longer going to be that submissive, quiet Alex. That was only the beginning, even though they were unaware of it at the time. They didn't say anything for 2 days. No calls, no texts. I had no idea what to anticipate. I knew it wasn't, though. Quiet. They never did that. I initially believed that they might be ashamed. Perhaps they were aware of their progress this time. However, I gave them too much praise. A knock on the door woke me up on the 3rd morning. I didn't respond. I recognized the person already. Everyone in my apartment has a camera. And sure enough, Dad was standing there with his face tight and his arms crossed in his old fishing cap. He stayed. He knocked repeatedly. After observing him through the crowds for nearly 5 minutes, I turned to leave. I returned to my bed. At last, he gave up. The calls began an hour later. Megan came first, followed by Maddie and then Mom. The voicemails began to pile up when I didn't answer. Dad finally texted that afternoon. "You're a coward. In front of people who have known us for decades, you made us look foolish. You destroyed a memory that your mother had laboriously planned. Following all that we have done for you, how do you pay us back? This needs to be fixed." I didn't respond. I sat down that night and accomplished something I ought to have done long ago. I printed out all of the transactions from the previous year and opened the joint travel account. I was unaware of dozens of charges in addition to the yacht and spa. They used my money to pay for things they never told me about, like restaurant tabs, shopping sprees, and Airbnb deposits. They were still in business. They looked me in the eye and told me that there wouldn't be a vacation this year because of the difficult times, even though they had been spending my savings behind my back. I should have been upset. It wasn't anger, though. No longer. It was chilly, as if everything had at last fallen into place. I had given it too many chances, allowed too many things to go unnoticed. I then gave the bank a call. I was honest with them, that none of the charges were ever approved by me, that there had been abuse of the account. They froze and flagged everything. It sparked an inquiry. I granted them complete authority to retrieve phone logs, confirm IP addresses, and do anything else they required. I then went into the account where I had been making monthly utility payments to the family, $200 for internet, $180 for water, and $487 for electricity, for the last 2 years each month. I turned everything off. The dam burst the instant the payments were stopped. Mom called. She left 5 voicemails when I didn't respond. The first 2 I listened to. She was yelling and claimed that the power had been cut off in the middle of her shower, that they were sitting in the dock, humiliated, that this was the kind of thing that caused people to cut off their children because it was petty and spiteful. That last bit was hilarious, but she left it like a threat. I'd been paying their bills since I was 22. I'm 28 now. Megan sent a screenshot of a declined Venmo transfer and captioned it, "So this is who you are now." Maddie followed up an hour later with, "You think this makes you look strong? It doesn't. It just proves we were right not to trust you." That one made me pause not to trust me. They stole from me, lied to my face, and now I was the traitor. That night, Dad called again. I picked up. He launched right in, told me I was a disgrace, that I was acting like a stranger, that I was playing with things I didn't understand, that I had ruined them. He said I'd embarrassed him as a father, that the whole family looked at me differently. I was creating a scene now without any justification. It was all because I couldn't bear missing one trip. At that point, I became impatient. It wasn't about being excluded, I told him. It had to do with being misled, exploited, and handled like a bank machine. I informed him that instead of stealing from me, they could have asked for assistance. Not only recently, either. For many years. He did not refute it. "You'll regret doing this to us," I just said. Calmly, I told him that this would never happen again and that he would regret doing this to me. I ended the call. I turned my phone off. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel bad about going to sleep. Although I felt liberated, I sensed that this was not the end. And I was correct. Their transition from anger to strategy was swift. They always started by exploding, then regrouped and attempted to regain control. However, the stakes were different this time. It wasn't only the son who withdrew. The money was taken with him by me. Megan shared a photo of herself on Instagram in front of a gas station with the caption, "This is what happens when family betrays you," 3 days after I cut them off. "It's always the quiet ones who stab you in the back," Maddie said. I stopped even following them. I got the screenshot from a friend. Now that they had gone public, they were fabricating a story and portraying themselves as victims. I was the bad guy, the envious sibling who betrayed his own family. Then the calls from relatives began to come in. I hadn't heard from my cousin in 2 years, my aunt from Houston. They were all suddenly very worried. I've heard you disconnected from your parents. Is everything all right? Why would you call off a vacation that they had spent months organizing? Alex, your mother is not doing well. Perhaps you ought to give her a call. It became evident then that they weren't simply angry. They sought to hold me accountable. Later, I learned from someone who still communicates with them that they have been phoning around in an attempt to figure out how to lawfully access the remaining money in the joint account. However, it was already locked. No one was approaching it without a subpoena after the bank marked it for investigation. I remained silent, didn't answer any family calls, and didn't reply to the post. Did not stand up for myself. I merely observed. Then an odd thing occurred. My leasing office sent me an email one morning. It was a request for my parents' proof of income. It seems that someone posing as me called and requested copies of my employment and rent records for tax purposes. I was asked to confirm that I had finished playing nice after the office noticed it. I extended the fraud report to include potential identity theft when I called my bank once more. I started recording everything, locked down my credit, and changed all of my passwords. I didn't pick up when Dad called the next time. His voicemail was left. The first sentence is still fresh in my mind. We won't allow you to ruin this family, regardless of who you believe you are now. Irony prevailed. They had attempted to access my personal documents, stolen from me, and defamed me, and the family was being destroyed by me. I chose to have one meeting with them, not for the sake of peace, merely to observe how deeply they had sunk into this imagined world. Halfway between our houses, we met at a diner. Dad was already seated when I entered. Maddie and Megan were also present. As if she were entering a courtroom, Mom entered last. They began softly and expressed concern, claimed they only wished to speak. We all make mistakes, Alex, Megan continued. You could have taken a different approach to this. I questioned her about the specific error I had made. Nobody responded. You didn't have to cut everything off, Mom said at last. It was unkind. Leaning back, I informed them that I had finished serving as the family's ATM. That as soon as they used my money and lied about it, the line was crossed. That this had nothing to do with the dinner, the spa, or the yacht. It had to do with the years of taking and taking without ever checking in to see how I was doing. Dad's face shifted. Then he stopped acting composed, claimed that I was punishing his peasants in the manner of a king, claimed that I had grown conceited, and that this was not how I was brought up. You're right, I informed him. I wasn't brought up. I was put to use. He got to his feet and left. Megan trailed behind. Maddie gave me a scowl. Mom was the only one who lingered. This family will never forget this, she said. I informed her. Excellent. At last they might remember what they did. She went out. Even though it was only July, I sensed that things were only beginning. I wasn't scared, though. I had everything to gain and nothing left to lose. There was silence following that dinner meeting. Not serene, calm as the calm before a storm. I was aware that they had a plan. One altercation with them was never the end of it. They were not the type to take the consequences. They viewed boundaries as riddles that needed to be solved. 2 weeks passed. Then came the next wave. A letter was the first step. A genuine physical letter was stuffed into my mailbox after being folded twice. No return address, no stamp, just my dad's handwriting and my name. One page, a printed document with the title Notice of Family Obligation, was contained within. In fact, when I saw it, I laughed. He made an effort to appear official, claimed that I owed the family $23,000 for the resources and unpaid support I provided throughout your upbringing. From the time I was a teenager, he listed groceries, utilities, and even a line item for Wi-Fi access from 2009 to 2016. At the bottom, there was no signature. It only takes 2 words to get it right. I blocked his number once more and threw it in the trash. Megan attempted to enter my building the following day, claiming to be checking on her brother while she did so. He is experiencing mental health issues. When she refused to leave, security had to escort her out. Maddie tagged me in a TikTok story 2 days later. A video with a caption showing her holding an empty refrigerator door open while pretending to cry. When your parents can no longer afford groceries and your brother interrupts you, I wasn't even trying to follow her. I received it from someone at work. It finally dawned on me at that moment. Money was no longer the issue. Control was at issue here. They were flailing after losing the leash. But I stayed calm. I flagged everything and called my HR department. Since I wouldn't rule out Dad phoning a reference call or something even messier, I explained the situation in case someone from my family tried to get in touch with them. My boss was understanding or a little stunned but supportive. Then I checked my Venmo again. Megan had included the note with her request for $2,500. Emergency! Maddie requested $800 with just a sad face emoji. I didn't turn them away, I didn't respond. I simply left them there, unread. Then something was different. That Sunday, the monthly payment for the house bills was not sent by me, for the first time in 2 years. Electricity is non-existent. Gas is nothing. Nothing on the internet. If they noticed, I wanted to see what would happen. They did. They resumed calls on Monday morning. Overnight, the power had been turned off. The utility company informed them that the automatic payments had been turned off when they called. By the afternoon, the internet had already gone down. Additionally, their water bill was past due. Mom begged me to just pay this month so we could talk in a tearful voicemail. Dad texted. Maddie wrote, "Don't do this to your mother. We are literally being tortured by you." However, I didn't answer. Rather, I sent the family group chat one last message. It was the same one they had used to organize their covert yacht vacation. I composed. I will no longer be your fallback option. Maddie and Megan are now 19 years old. Adults. Give them jobs. Allow them to assist you. You never expressed gratitude for the 6 years I spent paying your bills. I've stopped doing it. This isn't retaliation. Clarity is this. For the first time in a long time, nobody responded. There was nothing louder than my silence. They might yell. I left a message in the group chat and it took them 2 days to reply. 2 days, long and empty. Not even a bubble for typing. Perhaps they had finally come to terms with it, I thought. The cutoff, the quiet, the conclusion. They were simply regrouping, though. On Wednesday afternoon, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I let the voicemail go. I listened to the message a few minutes later, anticipating more anger or guilt. Neither was it. Uncle Jeff was there. I hadn't heard from him in years. He was the older brother of Dad, the person they didn't invite to family gatherings, always referred to as a flake or drunk. But he was straightforward and calm in his message. "Hi, Alex. This is Jeff. Everything was told to me. I'm not owed anything by you. But give me a call back if you want the truth about your father and that money." That evening, I gave him a call. He informed me of things I was unaware of, items that caused my stomach to turn. For example, Dad had been taking out loans from other family members for years, occasionally claiming my name to reassure them that they would be paid back, or how he pretended that I was now in charge of all the money in order to get money from cousins and even one of my mom's former co-workers. Additionally, Uncle Jeff verified something I had always suspected but never verified. Using a clone device, the travel account had been accessed from a backup they kept at home rather than from Dad's phone. I didn't even realize there was one. He told me that during his visit a few months ago, he witnessed Megan using it. Something inside of me was broken by that. I had underestimated how deep it was. It went beyond simple entitlement. It was planned and strategic. They were fully aware of their actions. Then Jeff said something that caught me off guard. "I've been considering hiring a lawyer. You may want to consider it as well. If they once more tamper with your name or credit, You will have to defend yourself. That's when it struck me. Family drama was no longer the only aspect of this. It was identity theft. And I hadn't filed charges yet, which was the only reason they weren't in jail. Megan arrived at my office early the following morning. Before allowing her entry, security called me. She attempted to bluff her way in by claiming to have an emotional emergency and that she needed to see me, as I saw on the camera feed. I instructed security to accompany her outside and take notes on everything. I received a credit report alert that same day. Under my name, someone attempted to apply for a department store credit card. They used my birth date, full name, and past address. I reported it right away. I made a formal police report that evening. It documented everything, but it wasn't yet a complete criminal complaint. I have a letter from Dad attached, screenshots of the credit agency's warning and the Venmo request. I made a list of everything Uncle Jeff had told me, even the names. After that, I permanently locked my credit. I received another call the following morning, this time from my mother. No voicemail, only the call, then another, then another. At last I responded. This time she didn't cry. They knew, she said. I told Jeff that I didn't realize how much harm I was causing to this family. She then made it plain that they would fight back if I went any farther. Take caution. Alex, we still consider you our son. Her last card was that one, the final one she owned. She believed that the phrase son still had a binding effect on me, but it didn't. What followed was even more surprising. Jeff gave another call that evening. He claimed that his angry father had come to his house and demanded to know what he had told me. Jeff claimed that his father shoved him because it became so heated. Jeff dialed 911, made a restraining order application. Dad now had his own police report. They were aware that the structure was crumbling. They became quiet after that, and I could see it. Not another message. No more phony requests for Venmo. No more posts in public. They were regrouping once more, but I was ahead of them this time, and I wasn't finished yet. They were still surprised by one more thing. The last phase. Others arrived and left without paying. The true test was that. They were aware of my schedule. Every month on the 1st, I paid their bills, similar to clockwork. They relied on it. But nothing this time. No internet, no gas, no electricity, no coverage. I would even take my card out of their phone plan's automatic payment system. Since Megan's first iPhone in high school, I'd been covertly covering this. 13 calls were missed when I woke up. I had 32 text messages on all the apps they could still use to contact me by noon. Dad had the best one. Your point has been made. Fix it now. I didn't respond. Mom sent a video message that night. She said that her father was yelling while she was pacing the living room with the lights off. She couldn't believe I did this, and the twins were crying. All of the things they gave me were given to me. They still don't get it, I thought as I sat in my apartment with the lights on, the air conditioner running, the coffee in my hand, and the hum. Not right now. I therefore sent a final direct message, just to get it over with, not to argue. You take advantage of me, tell me a lie, attempt to destroy me when I asserted my rights. For years, I have been paying your bills without saying thank you. You expect more now? No. Give Maddie and Megan jobs. They're not 9. They're 19. I'm no longer your bank. Never get in touch with me again. Megan called 5 minutes later. I allowed it to ring. Mom ignored Maddie's call after that. Then I said, "This time, Dad." At first, he was silent, neither irate nor shouting. Simply, "Be silent." "Is this it?" he inquired. "Yes," I said. "It's this." A long silence. Then he whispered, "You're doing something wrong." "No, I made the mistake," I said. "I began paying for people who thought of me as a wallet 6 years ago." I ended the call. It was 3 days later. Nobody made a call. Nobody sent a message. Then I got a text from my aunt, who never gets involved in family matters. "Your folks stopped by. They're not the same. Weary." keep quiet. Megan submitted an application to work at the pet shop, and Maddie. I believe they finally understood. I didn't respond. It wasn't retaliation, it was freedom. I had been carrying more than just financial burdens. The guilt was the cause, the strain. The years I spent thinking my value depended on my continued generosity. I felt like myself for the first time in my life, nor was I turning back. It was 3 months later. The sort of silence that didn't feel right. No more late-night voicemails, texts, or calls from Mom accusing me of being to blame for their current situation. Maddie and Megan also remained silent. I was aware that they were at work. I received a picture from a friend of Megan replenishing shelves at Walgreens with that aloof, immobile expression she used to Mark and others. I had heard that Maddie worked at a nearby chain, bagging groceries. In the picture, her name tag was crooked. I didn't make contact. I refrained from boasting. I simply continued on my way. Then I received a letter in the mail last Tuesday. Not a legal notice, not a bill. My name was written on the front of a simple white envelope. No address for return. There was only one picture inside. I hadn't seen that one in more than 10 years. Me, sitting on a beach towel between parents, perhaps at the age of 11 or 12, wearing one of those cheap plastic visors. I was squinting at the sun while holding a juice box. Mom was holding me by the arm. In fact, Dad was grinning. I stared at it for a long time because I couldn't understand what they thought this would accomplish, not because it moved me. In neat, angular handwriting on the back. Do you recall who you were prior to all of this? That was it. I noticed something odd when I turned the envelope over. There was a faint mark close to the bottom corner, as if a pencil had been erased and then left to trace. I noticed what appeared to be the beginning of a phone number when I tilted it in the light. However, it was missing a single digit. Is it intentional or an error? It made no difference. Even though I wasn't calling, that moment changed me because it confirmed my preconceptions. They hadn't relaxed. Not at all. The quiet had not been a sign of surrender. It was observing, planning, and waiting. And perhaps, just possibly, they were going to make one final attempt. Story 2. These lunches are for those who support us. I financed the car for my brother, my dad remarked, raising a glass to him. Let's not act. The following day, I nodded, set down my drink, and drove home. Their mortgage payment bounced, the credit card was canceled, and the watch warranty was terminated. The number of missed calls on my phone skyrocketed. I sent a text message. I was enraged. As I sat at that table, I pondered why I continue to be there for folks who only remember me when they are in need. I knew they didn't even want me there, which was the hardest part. It was my brother's meal. He had recently been hired for a marketing position. Not really noteworthy, except the behavior of my parents. It would seem that he had cured cancer. My mother reserved a table at Camp Pinellas, one of those establishments with dim lighting and a leather-bound wine list. A few days prior, she sent it in a text message. On Friday, we're having supper for Ryan. If you'd want, you can come. She wasn't sure if I would fit in at the community function. I arrived on schedule. I did, of course. I always did. No one appeared to notice, though. I could see my mother fiddling with the wine menu. Ryan and my dad were giggling at something concerning his new manager in the middle of the story. Next to my dad, across from Ryan, was the lone available seat. I took a seat and poured a drink for myself. I waited for someone to recognize me and brought one of the better ones, something I knew they wouldn't buy for themselves. They didn't. Ryan's new vehicle, new job, and new condo, all of which I had helped make possible, remained the main topic of conversation. Of course, no one brought that up. Nobody mentioned how Ryan phoned me 5 months earlier, pleading for assistance with the down payment and stating that he required a co-signer for the auto loan, how his credit alone was insufficient. He said he would reimburse me, said it was only to get him going. And me? I desired to join the family. I want to be required. I said yes. They shared anecdotes about Ryan's grind, laughed, and toasted. I remained silent, nodding like some distant relative who hardly made the guest list while munching on expensive calamari. Then my father got up. "This," he murmured, lifting his glass to face Ryan. "Meals for those who support us?" A pause occurred. "Let's not pretend," he continued with a smile. I didn't recoil. I said nothing at all. I simply glanced at my brother, then at him, and finally at my drink. No one corrected him. Not a single word was spoken. I informed them I had work in the morning after setting down my drink and getting up. No embraces, no farewells. Without turning on the radio, I went out, got into my car, and drove home. I launched and closed the credit card app the next morning. Every week, their shared card closed. I canceled the service I had paid for and proceeded to the warranty website for my dad's watch. I then stopped the monthly mortgage payment that was being deducted from my account by logging into the bank site. Technically, I was the owner of the house, my risk, my credit. They were aware of it, they just didn't discuss it. The calls began in the middle of the morning. My mother gave me 3. Voicemails in a panic, wondering if something was amiss. My dad gave me 2. Just one text. The mortgage payment was unsuccessful. "Is this an error?" Ryan was the first to get into a panic. "Hello, my friend. Are you okay?" 4 calls were then missed. Then a sad emoji and a snapshot of his bank balance. I didn't respond. I texted each of them the same thing. Let's not act as though I believed that quiet would be sufficient. I hoped that they would sit down and consider what they said and didn't say and come to terms with the consequences, that a family member would make contact as if they truly meant it. However, I was mistaken. They didn't stop. They went into a panic. The following morning was when it began. Ryan sent me a series of texts before I had even finished making coffee. I'm not sorry. Simply bewilderment such as, "Hey, what's up with the card? Did you accidentally cancel it?" As though this was all a random malfunction. I paid him no attention. He appeared outside my flat 10 minutes later. He did not knock immediately. I peered through the slats at him. After pacing for a while and checking his phone, he eventually gave a little knock. He didn't want to wake up his neighbor, for example. I didn't respond. He knocked once again and stood there sending a message. "Man, hurry up. Avoid making this strange. We're brothers." My heart was racing as I stood still, not out of guilt but out of self-control, because I wouldn't be at peace if I opened the door. I no longer knew him as peace. So I waited. Eventually, he departed. And 20 minutes later, he was grinning and sipping a coffee while posting on Instagram from a hip cafe as if nothing had occurred. The vehicle I paid for was parked directly outside behind him in the picture, with the same jacket I got him for Christmas last year zipped halfway up. Next was my mother's turn. She contacted me 3 times in an hour, leaving voicemails each time I didn't respond. After hearing the first 10s, I switched it off. Not with remorse, but with the same patronizing concern. Her voice broke. When I was excessively emotional as a child, she would always act as though I was having a tantrum. I received a lengthy text a few hours later. She said that I must have misheard the toast since I had taken things too personally. She said that I was always overly sensitive and that it was only a joke. Then she delivered the phrase that caused my jaw to tighten. "You have always had the support of our family. Don't let one supper ruin that, one meal." To them, it was just that. Just a small mistake. That was not what they wanted to see. It has nothing to do with the toast. It concerned all that came before it. Years of being accepted rather than valued. Years of not being loved but being helpful. I retrieved the vehicle loan paperwork from my desk. Everything, my money, my credit, and my risk, was in my name. Without me, he would not have been able to get it. When I gave him the forms, he hardly even looked at them. All he said was, "Thanks, bro." I took it seriously and began researching rims. Then my dad sent me an email. Subject: "Let's make everything plain. No greeting, no warmth. He had always taught us to keep money and emotions apart, and perhaps I had become too attached, according to a chilly paragraph. He claimed that I was acting in a domineering manner and upsetting the family. He even suggested that I reconsider my perspective on loyalty. That one struck me differently because it was so far away, not because it was harsh, as if I were an outside danger rather than his son. That night, I got a fraud notice on the joint credit account I had shut down. It had been attempted to be accessed by someone, most likely one of them. I looked over the logs. It was from my parents' zip code. Additionally, I received a call from the watch warranty company informing me that someone attempted to reactivate the coverage by posing as me. The account was flagged. My name was locked. The account has been sealed. On the third day, they were out of moves. I noticed the mortgage payment fail again, this time with a failed transaction attempt from an old checking account I had once added them to for emergencies. They were grasping now. Then came the message from Ryan. No greeting, no apology. Just this. You're blowing this up for no reason. I didn't ask you to do all that. You offered. Like none of it mattered. Like he hadn't begged for help on the phone 6 months ago, crying because he couldn't keep taking the bus to interviews. Like I hadn't told him I'd take care of it, and he hadn't said, "You saved my life, man." It was gone. All of it erased the moment I stopped being useful. That night, I logged into the vehicle account, called the bank, and scheduled a repossession. I wasn't making a point anymore. I was taking back what was mine. The truck came at 6:47 a.m. I watched it pull up from my car down the block. I wasn't going to miss this part. I needed to see it, not out of spite, but clarity. Proof that I wasn't just imagining all those years I gave and got nothing in return. Right there in their driveway was Ryan's vehicle. As usual, as if the driveway were his own showroom, he always parked there. His Instagram handle and the personalized plate were still on it. I also paid for that. The repo guy completed it quickly. No warning, no knock. In less than 90, I hooked it. Ryan must have been asleep. It was not until the back wheels were off the ground that he appeared. Wearing gym shorts and socks, he ran outside while shouting something I couldn't hear. After giving him a piece of paper, the driver returned to the truck. It was thrown on the grass by Ryan. Before the truck had even left, he was on his phone. "Most likely you'll call me." I didn't respond. The texts resumed that afternoon. He wasn't upset, not initially. He immediately went for guilt, told me that I made him feel ashamed, claimed he had to justify his bus ride because he had a date that evening, told me that when neighbors saw the truck, they inquired. I gave him permission to text. Then my mother called once more. This time, she left a voicemail. She didn't inquire about my well-being. She didn't say sorry. "Robert, whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it," she said. "Enough is enough. Sufficient for whom?" I looked through old financial documents for the remainder of that day. I wanted to remember how much I had accomplished, not because I had to. Everything that they'd conveniently overlooked. I located the lease that I co-signed for Ryan in 2019. He never paid the fine because he had broken it early. I talked about it. When the refrigerator broke down, I located the $900 I sent my mom, the same refrigerator they told their neighbors Ryan had purchased. I discovered bank emails demonstrating how I negotiated a reduced interest rate for their mortgage and then had it transferred to my name, allowing them to refinance without facing another rejection. I texted them all at once that night. "Let's get together. Tomorrow, everyone. My location." 6 p.m. They agreed with me, which surprised me. They probably believed I was going to reverse everything. Let's say it went too far. I'm sorry for the drama. Offer more money, perhaps. That's what I did before. They arrived together the next day. My father did not sit. As if we were having tea, my mom brought some store-bought pastries. Ryan appeared worn out. He said, "I need the car back, man, right away." I put a folder on the coffee table and held it up. Everything was inside. Loan documents, transfer receipts, bank statements. I gave them a moment to think about that. I then declared it to be over. No more payments, no more cards, no more favors. Ryan laughed. Not a real laugh, more like disbelief. My mom asked me what they were supposed to do. My dad said, "You're really going to turn your back on your own family over a toast?" I said nothing. I opened the door and waited. They left one by one, not saying much. My mom lingered a little, but I didn't look at her. She walked out that night. I blocked all 3 of them, and I slept better than I had in years. 3 days passed. No texts, no calls, not a single knock on my door. I figured maybe they were letting it sink in, maybe trying to process the fact that I wasn't going to come running this time. But deep down, I knew better. My family never reflected. They just retaliated. On Friday morning, I got a notification from the credit monitoring app. One used new inquiry detected, then another. I stared at the screen as I opened the app. My name, address, and social security number were used by someone to apply for 2 credit cards. They had no intention of concealing it. I was already aware of its origin. I printed everything for my parents and assisted them with tax filing a few years ago, full copies of SSN W-2s. All of it was labeled and arranged like a library in a cabinet in the hallway. I thought it was secure. Now that presumption was gone. I reported the fraud. My credit was frozen. I changed all of my previous passwords, all accounts, each backup email. They began the actual performance at noon. Ryan's lengthy, passive-aggressive Facebook status was filled with ambiguous accusations and dramatic pauses. It was about deceptive generosity and how some people use money to manipulate and control others while pretending to be helpful. No names. Enough information to allow everyone to fill in the blanks. Family, he wrote, is about love, not debt. Commenting began. Old relatives, companions, distant relatives. The post is liked by some of them. Others DM'd me to inquire about what transpired. I didn't respond. Not a single version of the truth was acceptable to them. When I got home that evening, I noticed something on my doormat. I have extra house keys. Years ago, I gave my mother those. They were concealed beneath a bakery receipt in a Ziploc bag. Not even a note was written by her. Just her name printed on the top of the receipt. For a long time, I stood there, looking at it. It seemed to be a farewell gesture. Not a farewell. It's more of a warning. I received a call from my landlord the following day. He sounded perplexed. In an attempt to update the lease and transfer payment responsibility, someone posing as me called the office. The caller ended the call when they requested confirmation. The attempt was reported as suspicious by my landlord. It was obvious to me that it was either my brother or my father. I drove by the house because they were beginning to show signs of desperation. I stayed inside. I didn't knock. I simply watched from my parking space down the street. They had not mowed their lawn. The mailbox was full. There were no cars in the driveway anymore, and Ryan's bike had vanished from the side gate. It appeared as though the house was holding its breath. Then Ryan returned on Saturday night. He didn't arrive by himself this time. He brought his former partner. I recalled her. Alyssa. She appeared uneasy, remained silent. He spoke all the time, pacing my porch as if he were practicing a move. The day after the car was repossessed, he claimed to have lost his job, stated that he was attempting to obtain a new one, but buses weren't working, and the interviews were all out of town. Claimed that although Alyssa had been assisting him, it wasn't enough. He gave me the impression that we were on the same page. The car will only be needed for a few weeks. Rob. I'll retrieve it. I'll even make a payment. I didn't answer. He then said something that made me stop dead in my tracks. Mom is discussing selling the house. I gave him a look. She's not sleeping. Dad is currently on medication. They're dying from this whole thing. That should convince me, he reasoned. I would return, because of that guilt. He took a step forward. Do you believe that the car is the only issue here? At last, I said no. It seems to me that you need me more than you ever acknowledged. I shut the door after that. That evening, I updated my phone number. Pulling the last path out of a dead tree was how it felt. My number change wasn't a big deal. It wasn't retaliation. I simply ought to have taken care of it long ago. I kept it a secret. I didn't send them a final note. They were unknown to me. However, I should have realized that they wouldn't tolerate it. My work phone rang during lunch 2 days later. Unknown figure. Something urged me to answer, even though I was on the verge of leaving it on voicemail. I picked it up without a word. It was my mother. She began speaking as soon as she heard silence. She didn't inquire about my well-being. She didn't inquire about my desire to speak. She threw herself into it as if she had been practicing. We are concerned for you. According to her, my dad was having problems falling asleep. Claimed that Ryan was depressed and that he hadn't been eating healthily. Your brother misses you as much as we did as children, she added. And because I was playing a video game, I had just bounded out of the room. The fraud was not mentioned by her. She made no mention of attempting to get into my lease. No responsibility, no apology, just worry. Weaponized as usual. Then she started working. Rob, we need your help. She claimed that because of their tight budget and the mounting late fees, the mortgage company had sent out a second notice. That maybe just for a few months I could help cover it again while they figure things out. Said she hated asking. But you're the one we can count on. I hung up. Later that day, an email came through, this time from my dad. He said he was trying to give me space but was reaching out as a father who still believes in his son. The tone was even, composed, and professional. The toast had been misunderstood, he said, that I misinterpreted it. He claimed that it was intended to be a humorous moment to commemorate Ryan's victory. The second half followed. His true motivation for writing. 2 mortgage payments were missed. A final warning had been sent by the bank. The house was in danger. They were looking at every possibility, he said, but perhaps that wasn't necessary. Perhaps I could get the automatic payments back in place. Perhaps things could return to normal. Dad, he signed it with love. No mention of the years I had supported them. Nothing about what they took or what I gave. I received a letter in my mailbox the following day, written by hand. Even before I opened it, I could recognize my mother's cursive. She wrote about my childhood Halloween costumes, bedtime stories, and how I would nod off on her shoulder when we were traveling. She claimed to have missed me, claimed that I had hardened and that I had once been considerate and kind. Then she gradually began to feel guilty, claimed that she and her father were growing older, that they had no plans, and that they never anticipated our growing separation. The line that stuck with me then came. Don't allow your pride to ruin our remaining family. On the left. I spent a long time staring at those words. Then I received a text from a former college pal, someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. I got a screenshot from him. Ryan sent it. He had received a message from Ryan asking if he could help me make sense. I was spiraling, they said. Stated that he was concerned that I would permanently cut off all communication due to a miscommunication. I pretended that I was the one who had done something wrong and that I likely regretted everything and only needed encouragement to return. I came to my final decision at that point. The car had been sitting in the impound lot, so I drove there. I informed the man behind the desk that I didn't want it returned, reclaimed, or sold. Under my name, I had it towed to a locked garage. Plates were taken out, canceled insurance. In a drawer, the title was sealed away. I refused to return it. Never. It was never truly theirs, not because I wanted to punish them. They showed no regard for it. It was not earned by them, and now, like all the other things they took away from me, silence was to be its fate, not touched, completed. They had given up on the car. Similar to me. 5 weeks have passed. They still haven't figured out how to get in touch with me. Or perhaps they gave up at last. In any case, the quiet has become the norm. It feels different in my apartment. It is more silent. Not only are they no longer there, but I'm also not constantly checking my phone in anticipation of the next task, the subsequent test. I would be expected to resolve the next crisis. I've begun taking little actions, nothing remarkable, preparing food I genuinely desire, walking without looking at the time. I sleep at night without having any jaw tension because I only answer calls that I recognize. There is no underlying guilt. I noticed Ryan's Instagram account appeared under a mutual friend story a few days ago. He was grinning as if nothing had happened while attending a house party, but I could see that he had a bus pass in his hand. Tucked behind his phone, it was just barely visible in the background. I didn't focus on the picture. I simply ended the app and went on. I received a letter from the mortgage lender last week. They had begun work on the house prior to foreclosure. I anticipated it. I only skimmed it enough to realize that they were out of time, not reading the entire thing. The house I had saved 3 times was on the verge of disappearing from their grasp. I didn't feel victorious. I also didn't feel bad. I experienced a sense of detachment and distance, as if I had just awoken from an extremely lengthy and peculiar dream. I was always told by my parents that I was fortunate to be tolerated because I was too invested, too serious, and too sensitive. They say those things frequently, and I believed them for years, believing that if I just did more and gave more, they would no longer regard me as a visitor in my own family. However, they never did. People who rely on you without showing you any respect, I've discovered, never truly love you. The version of you that keeps them afloat is the one they adore. They call it betrayal the instant you cease to be helpful and demand something in return. I didn't burn the bridge then. I simply left it. And it was already burning when I turned to look behind me. I will not return. Not right now. Never. It's been 3 months. I never imagined that life would find a rhythm. Calm. Keep quiet. Free. I hardly ever hear from anyone. Not a single phone call, letter, or social media ping. I feel as though I have landed on solid ground after stepping off a stormy pier. Then, at 8 p.m. yesterday, I heard someone knock on my door. I nearly didn't respond. Even though I usually ignore sudden interruptions, I felt compelled to open it. I didn't recognize the woman standing there. Early 40s, gentle eyes. She said, passing me an envelope. I believe you own this. Not another word. It contained a notarized statement and 1 photograph. The pictures showed my brother Ryan with a DMV receipt, bright eyes, and untidy hair. The notarized letter stated that Ryan had given someone else, not me, ownership of a car. It was a 2008 hatchback that had been restored. Dependable but rusty. Robert read the note beneath the windshield wiper in the picture. I appreciate everything you did for me when I needed it. Then there was a brief letter from Ryan, written by hand. I was mistaken, Rob. Without realizing what I had lost, I took. The fancy car isn't this one. I could only get it. My very first vehicle. You must have it for me. No conditions. Ryan, love, I spent a lot of time looking at that letter. No hurry, no guilt. Simply acknowledging that something had changed. That perhaps, at last, the family I believed I had lost was attempting to return. I didn't cry, even if it was just in the smallest way. I took my time calling him. I placed the photo and letter on my desk, next to the loan document folder that I haven't yet disposed of. I went to the bank tonight to double-check everything. On the way back, I realized that it didn't matter that I wanted to make sure this old hatchback wasn't a trick. The vehicle was undamaged. I owned it. No documentation, no loans, only a gesture. I'm still unsure if I'll ever make the initial effort to get in touch. I might take that car out for a drive, For the time being, I might just leave it in the garage. However, something inside of me changed for the first time. Not enough to pardon just yet. Insufficient to rename it family. But perhaps enough to begin to speculate about what might happen next. Story 3. For my brother's engagement party, I made the 7-hour drive. His fiance's dog sitter took my seat. "You don't have to be here," my mother whispered. I just canceled the event deposit, opened my banking app, and got into my car. My dad texted me at 9:04 p.m. The venue asked us to leave, but why? I became enraged, and then I realized how self-centered they truly were. The shame was even worse than that. When I realized that the guests around me had heard her, I felt a chill go up my neck. They weren't even acting as though they weren't listening. You are not required to be present. It was not a recommendation. It was dismissed. And it struck more forcefully than she most likely intended. Because this party wasn't the only thing at stake. It talked about all the times I've been pushed aside to accommodate Ryan's or Dad's ego or my mother's perception of appearances. To be there for my brother, I had to drive 7 hours through hot construction zones and heavy traffic. I didn't have any extra time off. I sent them $3,000 like everyone else, but I most certainly didn't have the money. I assumed that was what families did, so I didn't ask any questions. On the transfer, I even left a note. "I'm glad for you, buddy. Let's have a big party." I had written it that way. Their driveway and the road around it were packed with fancy rentals and personalized license plates, so I parked 2 streets over. The dramatic always appealed to Ryan. I could sense the vibe was off as soon as I entered. It wasn't hot. It was not happy. It seemed well curated, staged, like the set of a reality show. No one said much, but they looked at me. In search of the location, I made my way over to the tables. Family name cards. I went around once, but then again, no extra seat, no Kenny. There was no mention of my name. I then questioned a server. Good man. Younger informed me that every seat was occupied. I gestured toward the vacant chair. At the end, close to my dad, that ought to have been mine. He paused. "Oh, that's Lauren's dog sitter," he said. I simply gazed at him. There was no mix-up here. This was intentional. At that time, my mother visited. She didn't even smile, give me a hug, or inquire about the drive. Dropped that line as if it didn't matter. You are not required to be present. I could sense that people were observing me from 3 feet away from the patio entrance. A woman near the ordering table quickly looked away. In fact, someone else grinned. I realized they had made me the extra at that point. For aesthetic reasons, the out-of-town relative might be forgotten. The brother who lacked the polish necessary to blend in with the rest of the furnishings. So I went out. Without a word, I walked back to my car. For a full minute, I sat behind the wheel and gazed at the dashboard. I then pulled up the transaction on my phone after opening the banking app. I sent a $3,000 deposit for this circus. I hit the cancel button. I didn't care that it would take a few days to hit. I wanted the procedure to begin. Then my dad sent me the text at precisely 9:04 p.m. "We're leaving the party, but why? Where are you, not?" No. Is everything all right? Not even a straightforward return. Only a request. As if I had broken something. Something jolted in me as I gazed at that message. It wasn't anger. Not just yet. Something colder. A clarity I hadn't experienced in a long time. I came to the realization that I had been funding this idealized, picture-perfect fantasy, and I was the only one who still believed that I had to earn my spot. I didn't answer. My phone is set to Do Not Disturb. Drove off into the night after backing out of the driveway. I knew I wasn't done, but I wasn't sure where I was heading yet. I was the easy one, they believed. The silent one. The one who was hit every time. They were going to find out. I had finished that role. I didn't go very far. merely parked a few miles away in a shadowy area of a Target parking lot. Windows cracked, engine off. It took me a moment to sort out what to do next because it was quiet enough to think. However, I already knew the response. My mother had sent me the event invoice 2 months prior, and I opened it. It included a 6-person string quartet, furniture rental, catering, and more. $26,400 in total, divided among 9 individuals. They had done all the math. My share was $2,933, but I rounded it up to $3,000 when I sent it. I scrolled through the message chain. That's when I noticed something interesting. My name was still on the vendor forms. They'd used my billing info for the dessert company and the flower guy and some champagne rental service I didn't even remember agreeing to. My deposit wasn't just a contribution, it was the deposit. Mine under my name. My card. I called the desert place first, told them I needed to put a hold on the payment due to a family issue. They were surprisingly understanding, said they wouldn't charge the remainder until I gave the green light. Then the floral company. Same deal. It helped that I still had receipts and had communicated with them directly once or twice. I spent the next hour sending cancellation emails. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to delay things, hold charges, or freeze payouts. I wasn't trying to ruin the whole party. Not yet. I just wanted them to feel the crack in the wall, a little tension in their perfect night. By 11 p.m., I had put everything in motion. Then I drove across town to crash at my friend Nolan's place. He lived in a small guest house behind a bigger property and always had a spot open. He didn't ask too many questions, just handed me a spare blanket, nodded toward the couch, and offered me a beer. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb before I even lay down. When I woke up the next morning, it was chaos. Missed calls, 21 of them, texts from my dad, my mom, my Aunt Ryan, even Lauren. The tone was escalating fast. I ignored them all. Around 10 a.m., Nolan and I were having coffee outside when a black SUV pulled into the gravel driveway. It was my parents. They didn't knock. They didn't wait. They came storming through the back gate like they owned the place. My mom looked furious. My dad was holding his phone like it was evidence. "You've humiliated us," he said. "No, I said you humiliated me. I just returned the favor." They went off accusations, skill, tripping the works. How dare I ruin Ryan's night? How petty I was for storming off. I just let them talk. And when they were done, I said one sentence. "You now only $8,800? My dad blinked like he didn't hear me. "You heard me. I put $3,000 down under my name. I froze the rest of the vendors tied to that payment. You're going to cover those losses or those vendors can come after you, since you all benefited from a service I paid for." Lauren arrived a few minutes later, dressed like she hadn't sat still in party clothes. She tried to chime in. I didn't look at her. Nolan stood awkwardly by the steps, but I could tell he was enjoying the show. There was no good spin. No way for them to twist this. For once, I had leverage. I'm done being treated like a +1 in my own family. I said, "You want a clean party? Pay for it." I told them I'd be staying 2 more nights in town if they wanted to scream, negotiate, or throw another tantrum. They could do it after I was gone. They didn't leave right away. My dad stood with his arms crossed like I was some contractor who'd skipped out on drywall work. My mom started pacing in short, stiff lines next to Nolan's grill, completely ignoring the fact that we were guests in someone else's home. She was talking fast, not to me, but toward the air, saying things like, "You're making a scene. This is petty." Ryan's night was ruined, as if she could narrate the situation into something more palatable. "You've humiliated us," my dad finally said again, as if repeating it would make it my fault. "No," I said. "You humiliated me. You just didn't think I'd respond." They hated that. Hated that I wasn't yelling or crying or begging for anyone to hear my side. I was calm. To calm. That's when they knew they weren't going to get control back. Lauren showed up halfway through, still wearing the same outfit from the night before, but with a hoodie draped over it like that somehow made her part of the regular people. She tried the soft approach, started saying how this whole thing got blown out of proportion. I asked her a question. "You gave my seat to your dog sitter?" She didn't answer right away, just shifted her eyes toward the ground. "I didn't know there wasn't room for you," she said eventually. So the dog sitter was a higher priority. More silence. Nolan stayed off to the side, leaning against the back steps, trying to pretend he was anywhere else, but he didn't interrupt, and I appreciated that. My mom stepped in again, her voice tight. "This is not how families treat each other." I laughed just once, not because anything was funny, but because that sentence made me feel like I was on a game show called Gaslight. Me more mom. I looked at her and said, "Family doesn't tell their son. He doesn't have to be there. Family doesn't let a stranger take his spot at the table. Family doesn't call after the damage is done to act shocked when he walks out." Then I gave them the number. "You owe me $8,800. They stared. I explained it in detail. The vendors, the deposits, the contracts, my name, my billing info, my card. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I spoke like someone who was done playing dumb to keep the peace. They tried to argue. Of course they did. My dad asked if I was really going to charge my own family. I told him I wasn't charging anyone. I was collecting. I pay for things you used. You want to be adults who host luxury events and make unilateral decisions, then act like it. Pay your bills. Lauren tried to talk again, but I cut her off. I'm not negotiating with someone who thought I was beneath the guest list. You had your moment. This is mine. Eventually, they ran out of arguments. My mom called me cold. My dad called me ungrateful. Lauren didn't say anything else. Ryan didn't show up. I guess that was telling on its own. They left not because they accepted anything, just because they had no leverage. They'd walked into the one place where they couldn't control the narrative, and it terrified them. The rest of the day, I stayed quiet. Nolan and I grilled burgers, watched a movie on his projector, and barely spoke about the situation. But before I went to bed, I took my phone off Do Not Disturb just long enough to see what had piled up. Ryan had texted me. I didn't know about the seat. I didn't mean for that to happen. No apology, no ownership, just damage control. I turned my phone back off and tossed it on the table. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider, then they could deal with the outsider version of me. And the next morning they showed up again, this time with backup. Ryan was with them, Lauren too. All of them standing in Nolan's gravel driveway at 8:47 in the morning, like they were about to stage an intervention. Only this time I wasn't answering the door alone. They not like cops. 3 sharp hits on the screen door and no pause before the second set. Nolan was standing behind me barefoot, coffee mug in hand, and he looked at me like, "Are you sure you want this?" But I was already walking toward the door. Ryan was up front. Behind him stood my parents and Lauren, all dressed like they hadn't slept. Or maybe they'd all meet up early for a strategy session on how to fix the PR disaster I become. Ryan spoke first. "Can we come in?" I stepped aside only because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of calling me dramatic for refusing. Nolan grabbed his keys and went out the back. He wasn't about to sit in on a family implosion. We stood in the middle of the living room. No chairs, no coffee offered. Just 4 people looking at me like they couldn't believe I wasn't apologizing. Ryan started talking about misunderstandings, that he hadn't seen the seating chart, that it was Lauren's planner, that the whole thing spiraled faster than he expected. I cut him off. "You had 6 weeks to check the guest list. You approved the table cards. You walked past me last night and didn't say a word." He looked down, and for a second, I thought maybe he was going to own it. But then Lauren jumped in. "This isn't about a chair." "No," I said. "It's about the way all of you look at me, like I'm the extra, the one who doesn't matter, the one who pays, shows up, shuts up, and still gets treated like a mistake." My mom's arms were folded. My dad was standing like a statue, jaw tight. "Stop pretending this is new." I said when I got laid off, nobody called when I couldn't make Thanksgiving. 2 years ago, you told people I was going through something. When I finally get here after a 7-hour drive, you let someone who walks your dog take my place at the table. Ryan muttered something about not wanting a scene. I stared at him. You didn't want to see. You threw a $26,000 party. You hired a violinist to play Post Malone. You had an ice sculpture of your initials. But me sitting at the family table was going to ruin the image. Lauren whispered something to my mom. My mom didn't respond. Just kept watching me like I was an insect she didn't want to touch. You want to talk about scenes, I said. Let's talk about how you humiliated me in front of strangers. Let's talk about how you told me I didn't have to be there in front of guests. You didn't just exclude me. You made sure people saw it. That's when my dad finally said something. This is still your brother's moment. You're making it all about you. I laughed. I made it about me the second I canceled the deposit. I'm not paying for a party where I wasn't even welcome. He opened his mouth, but I wasn't done. You owe me $8,800. I don't care how you split it. I'm not chasing vendors. I'm not covering charges. And I'm not disappearing just because it's inconvenient for you. My mom asked if I was doing this out of spite. No, I said. I'm doing this because for the first time in my life, I finally understand that I don't know any of you. Silence. The room was quiet after that. No one knew what to say. They had come here expecting an argument. They could win a breakdown they could contain, but I wasn't melting down. I was finished. They left not long after. Ryan said he'd figure something out. My dad walked out without another word. My mom didn't look at me. Lauren was the last to leave, and she didn't even close the gate behind her. That night, I packed my things, one more night in town, and I was gone. No goodbyes, no calls. Let them stick with it. The plan was to leave early the next morning. No drama, no notes. Just gone. Nolan offered to drive me halfway. Said he had some errands in the next town over anyway. I was folding my clothes into my duffel when my phone lit up. It was an email subject. Final payment notice, Aurora Catering. I opened it, expecting it to be a follow-up from one of the vendors I'd already passed, but this one was new. It was a late-stage invoice that had somehow slipped through my filter due today under my name. Total amount $3,600. I read it twice. Then I called them. Turns out my dad had listed me as the primary event liaison on the contract for the catering team. He'd never told me they'd already charged my card for the deposit weeks ago. Now the balance was pending, and if I didn't cancel it today, they'd run the full charge by 5 p.m. I hung up and just sat there, phone in my lap, barely blinking. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was calculated. They didn't just take advantage of me. They expected me to not notice, to just swallow it, pay up, disappear. That's when I decided to go back, not to make a scene, not to beg for anything. But because if this was the end of things, I wasn't going to leave any room for misunderstanding. Nolan didn't even ask questions. He just tossed me the keys to his spare car and said, "Go finish it." I drove to Ryan and Lauren's place. Not the event house, but their condo on the other side of town. The lights were on and Lauren's car was up front. I knocked once, Lauren answered. She looked stunned. "I'm not here for another argument," I said. "I'm here to tell you I found the invoice catering my name, my card. Another $3,600. She blinked fast, then stepped back and let me in. Ryan was on the couch. He looked like he hadn't slept. Maybe he finally understood what this had become. "You're using me like a bank account," I said, "and then you pretend I'm the selfish one." He didn't deny it. Lauren said something about not realizing I was still listed as the contact. I cut her off. "No more explanations. I'm canceling that payment too, and if they charge me, I'm sending all of you the bill. I'll take it to court if I have to." Ryan finally looked up. "You go that far?" I nodded. "You've left me with nothing else." And then something I didn't expect happened. Lauren stood up, walked to the kitchen, and came back with an envelope. She handed it to me without saying anything. Inside was a check. Exactly $3,000 for the deposit, she said. The one you already paid. I stared at it. Part of me wondered if this was guilt, or if she just wanted to get me out of their lives without legal drama. I didn't care. I took the check and said, then that makes it $5,800 left. Nobody spoke. I walked out, back at Nolan's place. I dropped the check on the table and sat in silence for a long time. That was it. The break. The thing that couldn't be undone now. Not a misunderstanding. Not a bad night. A deliberate use of me. Financially, emotionally, completely. They had expected me to be quiet. They had no idea how loud I could be when I finally spoke. The next morning, I left just before sunrise. The air was heavy, but still. Nolan handed me a thermos of coffee and gave me a quiet nod. Neither of us were big on dramatic goodbyes, which I appreciated. I took one last look at his little backyard and pulled out of the gravel driveway without saying a word. I had only been there 3 days, but it felt like a year had passed. Or maybe I just aged one. About 20 minutes outside the city, my phone started buzzing again. I ignored the first few calls, but the texts kept coming. I glanced at one while I was at a gas station from my dad. "We need to talk before you leave." From my mom, "Come by the house. Don't leave like this." Even Ryan tried again. "Let's talk. Just us." They all sounded different now, less confident, less sure. I just fall back in line. I didn't reply, but curiosity got the better of me. I turned the car around when I pulled up to my parents' house. They were waiting in the living room. Ryan was already inside, pacing. My mom was sitting stiffly on the arm of the couch. My dad was by the fireplace, arms folded again. Lauren wasn't there this time. I didn't sit down. My dad started with the usual. "You've made your point." Then something about not letting this drag out, like I was the one creating the mess. I asked him point blank, "Are you going to pay the $5,800? He didn't answer at first. My mom looked over at him, but still nothing. "I'll give you $3,000, he finally said. "That's fair." I laughed once. Not a real laugh, more like disbelief. "You're offering me fairness now?" He stepped toward me, and my mom stood up like she thought she could mediate something. But I held up my hand. "No, you don't get to negotiate. Not after everything. Not after the way you made me feel in front of strangers. Not after telling me I didn't have to be there." My voice didn't rise. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I pulled the catering invoice from my back pocket and dropped it on the coffee table. "This is yours now. I've spoken to them. They're expecting payment today. You can either call them or let them come for you. I don't care either way." Ryan tried to speak up, but I cut him off too. "I've got nothing left to say to any of you, and I meant it. They didn't try to stop me when I walked out. No yelling, no tears, no parting shots. Just silence. The kind that doesn't feel peaceful but hollow. The moment I got back on the freeway, I put my phone on silent and shoved it into the glove box. By the time I got home that evening, I felt like I could breathe again. Not because things were solved, but because I'd finally stopped letting them drag me underwater. There were no more group texts, no calls, nothing. And for once, that was exactly how I wanted it. 3 days. That's all it took to pull the curtain back and see what I'd been pretending wasn't there for years. No more favors, no more deposits, no more silence. Just peace. And I wasn't about to give that up for anyone. The update. It had been a month of silence. No missed calls, no texts, not even a second-hand update from some cousin, for the first time in a long time. I felt like I could breathe. I'd started sleeping better. I wasn't jumping at every notification. I thought maybe they'd finally gotten it. Then one Sunday afternoon, there was a knock. I checked the people. My stomach sank. My parents. Ryan. Lauren standing on my porch like it was Thanksgiving and they were bringing pie. I opened the door halfway. "What are you doing here?" We thought enough time had passed. My mom said, as if a calendar could erase what they did. Ryan looked hopeful. Lauren held a pastel gift bag like she was delivering peace. Nobody smiled. They just looked expected. I let them in. I wanted to hear what they thought would happen. It took 5 minutes to see. Nothing had changed. My dad brought up the catering invoice, said he had a guy who might be able to negotiate it down. My mom mentioned moving forward with family holidays. Lauren asked if I had any dates in mind for the wedding RSVP. Not one word of apology, not one sentence acknowledging the party, the money, or what they did to me in front of strangers. It was like watching someone try to hit rewind on a fire. I stood up and opened the door. "You need to leave." My mom frowned like I was being unreasonable. Ryan just looked confused. "You think a month passed and I'd forget," I said. "You didn't come here to fix anything. You came to clean your conscience." Lauren tried to hand me the gift bag. I didn't take it. "I'm not coming to the wedding." I said, "I'm not coming for the holidays. I'm done." They stood there like they didn't believe me. "I gave you every chance," I said. "And every time you proved exactly who you are." They walked out slowly, still looking back, like I might stop them. I didn't. The gift bag stayed unopened on the table. I tossed it in the trash an hour later without even checking what was inside. That was the last time I ever opened the door for them.